The Holy Roman Empire, 15th century Bohemia. A crusade is launched against the Hussites by King Sigismund. The Hussite army, mostly consisting of untrained peasants, is equipped with early firearms, crossbows, polearms, and modified peasant tools. One of these is more unusual than others. It is most certainly the two-handed flail. To start off, what is a flail to begin with? To be honest, plentiful misconceptions about this weapon exist. No matter your knowledge about the Middle Ages, you will likely recognize the ball and chain flail as a heavy head hanging from a chain on a short handle. This is the first type of flail we will discuss. Indeed, in screenplay and films this type of weapon is very famous and is considered by a lot of people to be a definite medieval weapon. However, in reality, even if this weapon was used, it certainly would not have been a popular weapon among soldiers. You see, throughout most of history, armies fought in formations and lines, and as you can imagine, rapidly swinging out and about with a flail like this while there are people next to you and behind you probably would not have made you a very favourable companion in a battle. Oi, bloody hell, mate! What have you done? The poor bastard had a wife and 2 kids. I like pineapples. If that is the case with large field battles, one might assume that it would probably be used by town guards or in duels. Yet again though, there is no real historical evidence to back this up. No combat manuals exist on using the one-handed flail. Partially because it would be a very unwieldy weapon and generally dangerous to the user. Despite the fact that some medieval illustrations do depict one-handed flails, the images in which they are shown are usually rather dubious or bear some sort of fantasy element to them. You could say that the one-handed flail was more of a fictional, artistic design rather than a weapon that was commonly used. In conclusion, the one-handed ball and chain flail appears to be either a very uncommon weapon or a completely fictional one. There exists another, longer, two-handed flail however. The peasant flail, also known as the Hussite flail or two-handed flail, evolved from the farming tool used by the lower class members of society, or was otherwise literally an improvised weapon. Unlike the ball and chain flail, it had a rectangular head, a much smaller chain, and a longer shaft. Oh yeah! Because of the longer shaft and smaller chain, it was a much less dangerous design when compared to the one-handed flail. It was first put to use by the peasant Hussites during the Hussite Wars. A lot of the peasants at the time didn't have any available polearms ready for combat, but they had plentiful farming tools, so they put them to use on the battlefield against the forces of King Sigismund. However, exactly how these were deployed or used on the battlegrounds is unknown. When talking about dueling on the other hand, there are a few surviving manuscripts showcasing exactly on how to use the peasant flail, the most notable of which is a manual by the infamous Paulus Hector Mayer, who made beautiful illustrations along with the techniques. Slap my ass. Sir, why? Slap it now! The flail is utilized somewhat like a staff in the manuscript, and it certainly seems like a brutal weapon to go up against. However, there is another variant of the flail, which is even more menacing and generally evil. If you mention fencing techniques with the flail, it's important to note that another type of flail comes into play, the Iberian mangual. This weapon is different from the peasant flail in the sense that it sometimes has multiple heads and that the chain is much longer, usually just as long or even longer than the handle. In true Iberian tradition, the mangual was used a lot like the montante, the Spanish-styled greatsword. In essence, the techniques of the flail were nearly identical to the greatsword. Big sweeping movements that made use of momentum and tremendous speed would be utilized to deny several opponents any exploitable opening. Because of this momentum, the mangual head would always be in the air and it would not touch the user's hands in the slightest. A little like a helicopter, really. Truly, the mangual is a simply terrifying weapon, intended to be used against multiple opponents. But I suppose you could always use it as a potato masher. In the end, we've learned about 3 types of flails: the dubious ball and chain flail, the well-known peasant flail, and the intimidating, very underappreciated mangual. Whether you like your flails big, small, or even bent a little like the chest of a dachshund, there is something for everyone. That should conclude this video for now. I truly appreciate your view. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you, and have a mighty jolly day!